Item, guns. Washington State has two initiatives on the ballot that seemingly contradict one another. I-594 is a measure that would stipulate universal background checks for gun buyers. But Initiative I-591 prohibits background checks for gun buyers unless mandated by federal law. Polling shows majorities of Washingtonians favor both initiatives. So what if both pass? Legal expert Professor Hugh Spitzer of the University of Washington says this, quote, "My guess is that the state Supreme Court would try to reconcile the two initiatives, but they can't be reconciled," unquote. Item, abortion. Voters in Colorado and North Dakota will decide on quote-unquote personhood measures, which would grant legal status to embryos at the point of conception. Tennessee voters will decide on a resolution that would allow the state legislature to, quote, enact, amend, or repeal statutes, unquote, on abortion. Item, bears, as in hunting them. Maine voters will decide whether or not to ban the use of bait, traps, and dogs to hunt bears in their state.
Question, what are the political roots of laws passed by initiative and referendum measures? Pat.
One of the roots, John, is the sense that there's complete gridlock at the national level and people at the local level want to move on it. Particularly the minimum wage laws. I think and people have different expectations in different states.
Yeah.
This is the new federalism really in action. I think it's a good thing. And I predict that all of these minimum wage laws, especially the marginal increases, will pass.
Yeah, but I'm looking for the political roots. It's prairie populism. Didn't you involve yourself in a little bit of that?
Well, I involved myself in a little bit. There's also one you missed, John. Alabama is going to has on the ballot a referendum on whether to outlaw Sharia law in the state of Alabama. Yeah. I predict it will pass.
Yeah. This is a form of direct democracy. You understand?
Right. And it's voters taking matters into their own hands. But there are also powerful special interests behind a lot of these movements. And you talked about those two gun laws. The one gun law where people want background checks on all guns strikes me as pretty grassroots. The other one that came in is funded by the NRA to counter the earlier one, and so you got to look at where the money is coming from for most of these things. The personhood amendment in Colorado is funded by the right, and that's going to hurt the Republican candidate there because personhood goes too far. And it's been defeated in a number of states in the past.
Okay, initiatives and referenda. Why is there no provision in the United States Constitution for both?
I don't know. I don't know why the founders, what they were thinking.
Are you familiar with the Constitution?
I'm familiar with the Constitution, but
you know how it was written or what the circumstances were?
I do, but
he's a Brit. He knows that. Look.
No, he's not a Brit. He's a U.S. citizen.
They lost the war. Look, John, but you're talking about a federal initiative. Teddy Roosevelt at one point recommended that, go national initiative referendum, a vote nationwide on laws and ideas like that, and it might not be a bad idea.
I think we'd get background checks on guns, that's for sure.
But the moral of it is, and there's a lot of huffing and puffing on this issue, and I'm just trying to say that there was enough recognition on the part of the Founding Fathers to realize that we can't give all of this power to one source, and they wanted to have states have some authority. Yes, you like that idea?
Sure, I like the idea of having the states having some authority. I am not comfortable with these kinds of popular balloting that determines the outcomes of a lot of particular public issues.
Why is that?
Because amongst other things, they're susceptible, A, to a lot of money, B, to special interest groups who can get out those people who feel the most strongly about it. A lot of people stay away from this kind of voting. And you have to, at some point, this is where the British system, in my judgment, works so much better, you have people who are somewhat, shall we say, seriously involved and knowledgeable about the issues and the consequences of the issues will have a chance to really think about it and debate it and come up to a conclusion. This kind of populism, in my judgment, is very dangerous.
Do you think we could conceive of this as feeding a constitutional engine so that one of these ballots or referenda, a good one, could make it into the Constitution.
Well, see, this is, well, you'd have to have a constitutional convention for our
Of
Constitution. But yeah, but I think I disagree 100% with Mort. We got different states, especially become more diverse we become. I think the idea that Texas can do one thing on taxes and California do another thing, I think is terrific.
But you've also got some momentum building towards what will eventually be federal initiatives, i.e. marijuana. I mean, that is now being considered in a couple of states. It's in place in a couple of states. It's going to be on more state ballots in 2016 when more young people are out there voting. I mean, I think this reflects the sentiment of the country. I know you think we shouldn't have it, John,
well, it's
right?
It's in place in the District of Columbia. Right. By the way, there's notice that hidden guns on your person. I believe that didn't the district vote?
Heller in Washington.
Now they're okay in Washington, D.C.
The courts have been okaying a lot of the gun stuff in Washington, D.C., not the city council.
No, the city council just did.
Concealed carry?
Yeah.
Yes.
You got to move to Virginia for that, John.
I don't think so.
The city council just did it, Pat.
It just happened, Pat. Stay up with your D.C. news, Pat. Stay up with your D.C. news.
So
maybe I'll move back.
You don't have to leave the gun at home.
The broader issue here, though, is the broader issue is not whether the founders made a mistake or whatever. I think the broader issue is that the American people, and whether it's populist or good, Maud and Pat having the disagreement there, ultimately the American people, and what we're talking about in the previous segment about trust in Congress, need to take more ownership of our democracy. It's attention to detail that's needed here because it is a democracy, and people sometimes we say, "Oh, it's also bad."
I don't mean to be crude, but it breaks up the constipation in this city if people can act at the state level on their own on issue after issue after issue on which they disagree, and the laws are legitimate. People don't like them; they can move out of one state.
You're talking about
can you tell Congress?
You're talking about the Congress.
Can you tell
Congress, the whole government here, and everybody believes it's gridlock.
Well, not the D.C. government. Not the D.C. government. Hidden guns and marijuana.
Well, they got a lot of other things going on.
Not marijuana yet?
No, but the D.C. government is under the thumb of the Congress, and taxation without representation, it's on my license plate.
Yeah, but it's not showing. It's not showing that much that the D.C. government is regulated in any real sense by the Congress. As a D.C. resident, I can assure you of that. Exit question: should there be a citizen referendum process to pass federal legislation? Yes or no?
I think there should, but I think it'd take a constitutional amendment to do it.
Yeah, I think there should be some way to do that, but it's probably not constitutional at the moment.
I think the broader issue, you have a constitutional amendment if that's what you want to do. I wouldn't support that. No.
Yeah.
I think take ownership of Congress, get more involved in the primary process, get people out if they're messing. You see how many people are just incumbents that get re-elected. If they do a bad job, engage. Don't whine about it. Take ownership.
What do you think of what he's saying?
I agree with that, but I frankly am totally opposed to that kind of a method of legislating things. That you have to have a serious amount of knowledge about a lot of these issues. You can't expect 300 million people to really immerse themselves in it. And I think it's very dangerous in terms of what kind of...
people can elect a president.
That's
yes, they can. It's an easier thing to do that. You do it once every 4 years. We're not talking about the kind of repeated referenda that you would now...
Okay.
It would paralyze our political...
Okay, Mark, no, Eleanor, no.
Background checks for guns.
No, Eleanor. Oh, yes, Eleanor. Mort wins. Issue 3, healthcare failing grade.
Listen closely. Of the world's rich industrialized nations, 11 of them, the U.S. healthcare system ranks last. Not only does the U.S. underperform on healthcare, it has the most expensive healthcare system. Americans are getting little bang for their big bucks. Those are the findings from the COMMONWEALTH FUND, a private healthcare research think tank, which examined the healthcare systems of the following countries and ranked them thus. Number 1, meaning the best, the United Kingdom. 2, Switzerland. 3, Sweden. 4, Australia. 5, a tie, Germany and the Netherlands. 7, a tie, New Zealand and Norway. 9, France. 10, Canada. 11, dead last, the United States. Here's some data. The U.S. average per capita 2011 expenditure on health care was $8,508. Compare that to the U.K., the nation with the #1 health care system, $3,405 per Brit, which is $5,103 less than the U.S. And despite that $8,508 spent per American citizen, the U.S. ranks last in efficiency, equity, meaning access to care, and the overall health of its population. Quote, people in the U.S. go without needed health care because of cost more often than people do in other countries. Americans with below average incomes are not visiting a physician when sick, not getting a recommended test or treatment or follow-up care, or not filling a prescription or skipping doses when needed because of costs. Unquote. These deficiencies lead to the U.S. ranking last on, quote, infant mortality and second to last on healthy life expectancy at age 60, unquote. And for those who do get care, the cost is high in part because of, quote, administrative hassles, avoidable emergency room use, and duplicative medical testing, unquote. What's the most noteworthy difference between the U.S.'s healthcare system and its better-ranked peers? Answer, the absence of universal health insurance coverage. So says the report. The data studied in the report is from before the Affordable Care Act, i.e. Obamacare, is fully installed. So, will Obamacare improve the U.S.'s standing when it is fully enforced?
Question, where does the U.S. rank tops in the Commonwealth Fund study? Do you know, Mort?
No, the U.S. Ranks in terms of high-quality medical care and research that goes into that kind of high-quality medical care, that I think we are unparalleled in that one small area.
Access to preventive care, you mentioned that. Access.
Well, there is access, I suppose, but the access in the British system or in the Canadian system where I grew up is totally different and totally superior.
You've got to talk about the population. You know, it used to be that not a single state in the United States had more than 15% of its people obese. And now there's not a single state in the United States that doesn't have an obesity record above 15%. Among America's poor and disadvantaged, you got high gun crimes, you got violence, you got automobile accidents, you got obesity, all of these things. And look at the size of the country, the United States, 320 million Americans. There are almost as many people in that survey, John. The Americans are equal to the entire other 10 countries combined.
Well, I don't know what the point of all that is, but to say that Americans have not had sufficient access to quality health care, many Americans do not have sufficient access to affordable, nutritional food. There are a lot of things wrong in this country. It works great for people in the top 1%, top 2%, probably the top 10%, and the Affordable Care Act is evening out a lot of this. It's going to take time. People now can see doctors and they can get preventive care. Preventive care doesn't cost you anything. There are no co-payments for it.
There are major issues if you look at the American Medical Association price treatment points, the lack of competition, barriers to entry for foreign doctors, duplicate medical expenses, lack of competition between different hospitals. The system is not working as it should.
Predictions, Pat.
Putin will use his oil and gas leverage to squeeze Ukraine this fall.
He'll try, but the West will hang tough.
Tom.
He'll do it, and I think he'll get concessions from doing it.
Mort.
He'll do it and get a lot of concessions for sure.
Bye-bye. Out of time.